UFC Fight Night, Jailton Almeida versus Derrick Lewis. Welcome to another UFC prediction and analysis video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. He goes by Zan, I go by Harris as usual. Fight by fight breakdown and analysis from that betting perspective specifically. We want to let you know which fights are worth the value, which fights to avoid, which underdog has the best shot at winning, and some parlay action towards the end of the video as well. Make sure you hit the thumbs up on this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel here at Boxing MMA Picks. And most importantly, we're going to want to hear from you in the comments when it's all said and done. This UFC Fight Night is taking place in Brazil. Let that be a precursor to a lot of the fights and a lot of the directions I'm going for a lot of the fights. We have 13 fights overall. 6 of them are going to be on our prelims. 7 of them are going to be, 6 of them on the main card, 7 of them on the prelims. Let's get started right away. Fight number 1 of the prelims, Kauê Fernandes versus Marc Diakiese. For this fight, Fernandes, 2-fight winning streak in the LFA. He's making his UFC debut. Half of his 8 wins are via KO TKO. He is introduced as a freestyle fighter. Fights from the outside. He has a kick-heavy style, sneaky high kick. Has a head kick KO win in his last fight, so very capable with that. Decent jab to go along with it. Decent check hook as well. I don't think his striking is the cleanest, but he can be quick. He can be explosive, and of course, with the head kick, he can be dangerous. He has a bit of a ground game. He is a BJJ black belt. I have seen him land takedowns in the LFA. Looks like he's a well-rounded fighter from what I'm seeing. Cardio is something that I'm potentially concerned about with him. Striking defense is also something I'm worried about with him. And also his ground game defensively, haven't been too impressed there. That could be a factor going up against Marc Diakiese. We know that he lost to Joel Alvarez back in July. Good overall stand-up, has good fakes, good movement, good calf kick, pretty athletic as well, good long jab, just solid hands in general, and a solid kickboxer in general. We know that he can be taken down, though he is pretty decent off of his back. Doesn't really let his opponents lay and pray. He's always staying active. He's trying to work his way back up. And, it's worth noting, we've mentioned it a few times, he has been showing his ground game over his past few fights. His takedown number is all the way up to 3.32 per fight at this point. Good top control, bit of a lay and pray type of style, but still active enough to score points effectively. He'll chain those wrestling attempts together if you try to work your way back up. So really showing that full MMA prowess at 30 years old. I mean, that's what you want to see from an improving fighter. Despite Diakiese being, solid all around, I think this is anyone's fight. Regardless of how skilled Marc Diakiese may be, hasn't really done anything in the UFC to separate himself or to establish himself as a certain level of fighter, right? So you look at his UFC record, he's 7-7. So he can win, he could lose. Anything could happen in the UFC with Marc Diakiese. So right away, I'm going to say that's going to put value on the underdog side here for the newer Kauê Fernandes. That said, I don't believe that Fernandes is sort of like a serious prospect here making his debut. I think that Diakiese's striking should be cleaner. I think Diakiese should be able to turn to the wrestling and land the takedowns. I mentioned Fernandes doesn't have the best takedown defense. I don't love Fernandes off of his back either. Diakiese is susceptible to submissions like we saw in his last fight. So again, not a guarantee by any means, but I do believe that he keeps himself protected here. Diakiese will be my pick, not in a confident fashion, but he is taking on a newcomer and should use that experience to his advantage. So I'm going Marc Diakiese to get it done.
Yeah, this is going to be a good fight to start the card. The UFC knows they're bringing in a guy like Kauê Fernandes, who is all action. This guy has finishes, a dangerous fighter, body shot finishes, hands. This guy can finish the fight. Leg kicks, as we've seen in his last fight. He's fighting a more well-rounded guy, and I think in terms of Marc Diakiese, who's going to want to implement the wrestling. I think he's going to have the striking advantage in this fight. I want to fade Diakiese so bad because he's the type of guy that doesn't have the best IQ. I can easily see this guy getting locked into some type of choke, going for a takedown in a fight that he's winning. Um, it's really hard to feel confident with Marc Diakiese, but I do think there's levels to the game, and I think that at this point, I think Fernandes, yes, he's the more dangerous guy. He definitely has the ability to get a finish in this fight because Diakiese has been hurt before. But I think Diakiese coming in with being the stronger guy, the more athletic guy, the faster guy. I think he's gonna be able to get some takedowns in this fight. And also on the feet, I think he has an advantage there. Yeah, he has power as well. So I definitely think Diakiese gets this done. But as far as confidence, you can't feel confident in any fight with Diakiese. He doesn't have the best IQ. He could be winning the fight, and then again, like I said, puts himself into puts his head right in there for a choke. So tough fight, but I got to go Diakiese here to get the win. But I'm definitely not making any bets on this one.
Second fight of our prelims, Eduarda Moura versus Montserrat Conejo Ruiz. For Ruiz, 2-fight losing streak. She lost to Jacqueline Amarim back in August. She's going to force that forward pressure with her striking. She is decent on the feet, punch-heavy style, not really many kicks, but she can definitely throw combinations. She can connect quickly, has some explosiveness to her game for sure. She has a strong clinch with her frame. She's a shorter fighter, stockier fighter. Uses that, low center of gravity to her advantage. She has a good wrestling ability as well. 7-time Mexican wrestling champion. And we see her UFC numbers there at 2.5 takedowns per at over 80% on the accuracy side of things, especially for this division. Her takedown attempts are pretty good. Good patient top control, good level of activity. Again, strong frame. I mentioned that. Hasn't really helped her too much defensively, just 66% takedown defense. So let's see what happens here. Going up against Eduarda Moura, who is undefeated at 9-0. She's coming from Dana White Contender Series. 5 of her 9 wins are via submission. She's a grappler. So again, that could be dangerous for Ruiz. She's aggressive with her striking. She forces a forward pace. She's also explosive. Ultimately, she will be looking for takedowns. I do think her takedown attempts are pretty high level from what I've seen. Good patient top control, good activity. The submission threat is there, of course. This fight, should go Mora's way, right? Ruiz may not be a UFC level fighter, is something that we may be realizing with her. She hasn't looked good at all in her last 2 fights. I think that Ruiz is going to have problems with Mora's heavy takedown attempt style. I think that Moura, being the taller fighter, the longer fighter, the bigger fighter, I think that she will be able to be the one that presses the action forward. And just like how we saw Ruiz give up top control in each round of her last fight, I can see Moura landing takedowns and implementing top control in this one. Moura should win pretty easily, though it is her debut. Don't forget, of course, this is an event that takes place in Brazil. I mentioned that earlier. And I think there's going to be some showcase fights that are set up for some of these Brazilian fighters. I think this is one of those fights. I think the UFC is giving this newcomer, this Brazilian newcomer fighting at home, a very winnable fight, especially for Moura's style. And I think that Moura is going to potentially make it look easy and make a name for herself in this women's strawweight division. So I like Eduarda Moura to get it done.
Yeah, I'll be quick, man. I think this is a fight where the UFC are they in Brazil?
They are.
Oh, this is definitely a showcase match. Eduardo Moura is gonna she's levels, man, in terms of grappling, and Ruiz is not the greatest striker to kind of offset the big advantage she has in the grappling. She's gonna be the bigger girl as well. Ruiz is a small, is small, like she's 5 foot. I don't see Moura having issues getting this to the mat, and once she gets it to the mat, she's dangerous. She's high level. This is a quick fight for me. I think Moura gets it done. Wouldn't be surprised, gets it done in that first round, but I definitely see her getting a finish at some point in this fight. So Moura is definitely my pick, and I'm pretty confident she gets it done here.
Fight number 3, Angela Hill versus Denise Gomes. Angela Hill, unanimous decision loss to Mackenzie Dern back in May. she's a Muay Thai fighter. She's good on the feet, good continuous movement. She moves well laterally, uses a lot of fakes and feints in her style to set up her attack. I like that she throws punches and combinations as well. She can definitely be effective with her striking, keeps a good distance, has a good long jab, decent takedown defense as well at 76%. She does have good ability to get up if she is taken down, and she has really good cardio, right? She can fight at a high pace throughout the entire fight, and we see how that can wear on her opponents. Her last fight was a little concerning. She was outpaced. She was taken down multiple times, and we know she's getting up there in age at 38 years old. So curious to see, is this signs of a decline in Angela Hill? Denise Gomes, on the other hand, 2-fight winning streak. She beat Yasmin Jaregui back in July. She has solid hands, solid striking. She can be very explosive, definitely has the power as well. 6 of her 8 wins are via KO TKO, including that impressive 22nd KO in her last fight. Good pressure and pace. She is usually the aggressor in her fights. Expect her to keep the fight on the feet. Very much a striker. Also just 23 years old, right? So you can expect her to improve fight over fight as well. It's a very interesting fight for several reasons. I mean, firstly, the level of experience. Angela Hill at 38 years old, Denise Gomes at 23 years old. Angela Hill has more wins in the UFC than Denise Gomes has total fights, right? Secondly, Hill more likely to be the better overall MMA striker. I think she has the wider skill set. I think she's more proven from a cardio perspective as well. But we see Angela Hill as the underdog here because of the potential upside of Denise Gomes. I think that, fighting at home is also a big factor as well. But I do think she may be getting a bit too much love from Vegas based on what she did in her last fight. Kind of have to roll the dice on Angela Hill here. Usually I'm not the one that's going to go with a significantly older fighter in these types of spots, but I think the key stat in this fight is, amongst Angela Hill's 13 losses, which is a lot of losses, she's never been knocked out. So that tells me that Denise Gomes is going to have to beat her, not necessarily on the scorecards, but it's going to take more than just blitzing in and hoping to land that big shot right away. Angela Hill's way too experienced for that. Denise Gomes is going to have to do more to get it done. Maybe have to bring it to the scorecards to get it done. After a lackluster performance against Mackenzie Dern, I am looking for Angela Hill to bounce back, to be a lot more conscious of her game plan for this fight. I think that Angela Hill can outpoint Denise Gomes, especially if she avoids that, early fight threat, staying out of the way of Denise Gomes's power. But I mean, of course, it's a risky one on either side that you go here. But I think this could be one of those fights where I'm willing to be on the underdog side, and I'm going to go with Angela Hill. I think she's going to get it done.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of those fights on paper you gotta respect, and you gotta see that Angela Hill definitely could win this fight as an underdog. She is the strike type of striker that can keep, if she can keep it at distance, I don't see how she could lose this fight, and she's gonna look good doing it. Really good distance control, really good kicks, good punches, good boxing, good Muay Thai. That's her game, and I think if they fight at range, she's gonna have a big advantage with her quickness as well. Just outpointing Gomez to a decision type of win. And with Gomez, we're not really sure as far as in the UFC if she can go the 3 rounds at that pace that she brings. This girl's a dog. She goes in there and she wants to close the distance, get in on you, throwing heavy hands, really good power, knocks fighters down. Something you don't really see in this division, in this women's division. It's a really tough fight because, again, we don't know how Gomez is going to go if Hill is still in the fight in that second round. You got to think as the fight goes on, Hill can definitely use that experience, her cardio, and just outpoint her the second, third round. You got to think that is a realistic situation that can happen. But the other situation that can happen is Denise Gomes being good for at least 2 rounds. And we know that she's going to win. We know that she's going to be good in that first round. But if Denise Gomes comes in and closes that distance, uses her boxing, I think she has the boxing advantage. I think she's going to be able to hold the center of the cage. And Hill, I think, is going to have to move around to avoid the power shots. Again, close fight. Harris, I get it why you went with Hill. I'm going to go with the younger 23-year-old Denise Gomes. Angela Hill is 38 years old, and again, her style is a style that's is a young woman's style, moving around that ring, avoiding the danger, avoiding the damage. She moves around, her quickness. Eventually, it's going to get slower against a fighter like Denise Gomes that goes for that kill, has that power, is going to be closing that distance. I think this could be a passing of the torch type of fight. I'm going to go with Denise Gomes, 23-year-old. I think the UFC wants to give her a name on her record. The UFC definitely likes her based on her last performances. And given her Angela Hill, they got to think that she's definitely, she can get this done. And I believe it. So I'm going to go with Denise Gomes here to get the win. In a fight that could go either way, Angela Hill has that path, but I think it's going to go the young girl's way. Denise Gomes here getting the win.
Fourth fight of the prelims, Vitor Petrino versus Modestas Bukauskas. Pretty solid light heavyweight fight here. Petrino beat Marcin Prachnio back in July. He's a finisher. 7 of his 9 wins are via finish. Big power for sure. 6 of those 7 wins are via KO, TKO. Has a boxing heavy style, good forward pressure. He is patient though, doesn't drain his gas tank unnecessarily, and he's fairly light on the feet. He's a pretty good counterpuncher. I do think his striking could use more technique. He can be outstruck, but he's dangerous. He's not afraid to engage. And we also got to note 7 takedowns in his debut, 11 takedowns in 2 UFC fights at this point. That's definitely a part of his game. The top control is there. The grappling is there. Pretty good. Just 26 years old. Pretty good looking prospect here for the light heavyweight division. Taking on Modestas Bukauskas, 4-fight winning streak now. He beat Zach Pauga back in June. Good movement, stick and move type of style. A little bit of switch stance as well. He has a kick heavy attack stylistically. Does use a decent jab, though. His hands aren't bad by any means. A lot of fakes, a lot of feints, trying to get things set up. A lot of forward action with pretty solid continuous pace as well. He has effective combinations. He can be explosive. Cardio is not an issue with him. He's been in many 5-round fights in his time in Cage Warriors. This is a fighter that, has good tools, good speed for the division, good stand-up, good work rate. Made his way back into the UFC and has a couple of wins to show for it as he looks to continue momentum. I look at Bukauskas as, a higher level of opponent compared to Petrino's last fight versus Marcin Prachnio. But in a lot of ways, I look at it as the same type of fight for Petrino. Bukauskas will be faster, with more movement, the way that Prachnio was. Bukauskas 75% takedown defense, which is, I think, better than Prachnio, if I'm not mistaken, but he has been taken down 3 times in his last 2 fights. So that tells me that Petrino should be able to land takedowns in this one. But of course, compared to Prachnio, Bukauskas is a bit more dangerous with the striking. And that's where Bukauskas definitely has some value. I think that he may use that stick and move style pretty effectively. Cause some issues for Petrino. I think the cardio can potentially work in Bukauskas' advantage as well. But I want to think that Petrino will be able to adapt. I want to think that, Petrino will be able to use takedowns. And I am confident enough in Petrino's ability to be effective for at least 2 rounds. Petrino's power threat also is a major factor in this one, because for Bukauskas, you see his record there of 15-5. 3 of those 5 losses via KO, TKO. So I think this is a good spot for Petrino, even though I do believe that it can be a competitive fight, or it can be a tricky fight for him. But I do think that he'll figure it out. I do think he has a few key advantages stylistically, scorecard wide, wise as well. And I do think he possesses dangers with his striking that could also end the fight early. So I like Vitor Petrino in this spot. Again, this card is in Brazil. So we got to think that the Brazilian fighters are going to be in winnable spots for nearly all of these fights. I think this is the case here as well. So I'm going with Vitor Petrino to get it done.
Yeah, this is actually a great fight. And when you look at this fight, you gotta on the underdog side, Modestas Bukauskas. And now this is a fighter that I've been watching a lot. He left the UFC or he got cut, went to Cage Warriors. I was watching him there, betting on him there. He was a really good fighter in that lower level organization. He's back, right? And in his first fight in the UFC, he looked really good. That's how he was looking in Cage Warriors. He improved his striking. He moves around. In this fight, he's gonna be the technically better striker. He's way more technical than Petrino. If this was a straight kickboxing fight, Bukauskas would have a really good chance to win this fight. Because I think that he's going to be able to land strikes. He has the straighter punches, the better technique. But when you look at Petrino, this guy is how do you put it? This guy has power, and he could be losing the striking. It just takes one or two shots in this division to change the course of that round. And Petrino holds that power. I think the Bukauskas style would be really good in like the lightweight division because Bukauskas doesn't have the greatest power. So he kind of has to win these decisions. And in the lightweight division, light heavyweight division, the power is there to knock you out. So if you're gonna have that kickboxing style like Chuck Liddell and kind of do your thing, you got to have power with it in this division. I think against a fighter like Petrino, I think Petrino can expose the power difference. And also Petrino, again, he's a striker, but in his last fight, his last fight, he was showing some grappling. He was showing some takedown ability. I think this Petrino guy is improving, is working on that grappling, and I think that's an advantage that he can exploit in this fight. So I'm going to go with Petrino. Again, I can see him losing the striking. There is a path he loses. There is a way he loses this fight. If Bukauskas can take the shots and outpoints him for 3 rounds, but Bukauskas does not have the best chin, and I think Petrino is going to connect. So I'm going to go Petrino here for the win in this spot.
5th fight of our prelims, Victor Hugo versus Daniel Marcos. For Daniel Marcos, split decision win over Davy Grant. That was back in July. Still undefeated at 15-0. Rangy on the feet, sharp, good technique, good calf kicks, good combinations, good IQ on the feet overall. The movement is there. The striking defense is there. He's patient. He's calculated as a striker. And he's good at keeping the fight on the feet. Good takedown defense at 89%. Good ability to get up if he is taken down. He looks good, right? Looks good, looks fast, looks sharp, good timing, good reactions, good counterpuncher. I like what I see from Daniel Marcos going up against Victor Hugo, who competed on Dana White Contender Series just last month. He's on a 13-fight winning streak. Aggressive on the feet, super dynamic, bit out of control. Wouldn't really consider him to have a high level of technique, but he can be effective. He can be patient. He's going to try to bait you in with his style. And I've seen him work the clinch. I've seen him land takedowns effectively with good top control IQ as well. I've seen good grappling out of him. He is Brazilian, so that's not surprising. Good submissions. 9 of his 24 wins are via submission. I think it's a good fight here. I think, we see some stark differences stylistically. Expect Marcos to be the better striker, of course. Expect Hugo to add in the takedown threat, the submission threat for this fight. But I think Marcos is too good with the takedown defense to be too impacted here. I think that Marcos has the toughness to be able to take the fight to Hugo, despite Hugo being tough himself. More than that, expect Marcos' striking IQ to make a difference here. Though Hugo is dynamic, again, he's not really in control from a striking perspective. So I expect Marcos to capitalize on that, again, to be the better, cleaner striker, to be able to keep the fight on the feet. So Daniel Marcos is going to be my pick here.
Okay. This is the fight where I watched Victor Hugo on the Contender Series. I picked him to win that fight, and one thing I liked about him was his grappling ability. He's a strong grappler. He gets it to the mat. He really does a lot of work there, and he has decent cardio from what I saw. But this is the UFC, and I don't think his cardio is going to hold up for what he's trying to do. I think eventually he may get a takedown in that early round, but as the fight goes on, I think takedown is going to be tough. And Daniel Marcos, this guy is a high-level striker. I think he's the much better striker in this fight. He has really good leg kicks, and I think the leg kicks is going to be something he should look for in this fight. I think Hugo can win this fight. Hugo definitely has a path to win the fight if he can keep up that grappling pace for 3 rounds. I just don't think he can do that for 3 rounds at this level. And Marcos has good takedown defense that as the fight goes on, Marcos should be able to pick him apart with his striking, to get the leg kicks going. I think there's a big advantage on the feet. Marcos is accurate. So I'm going to go Daniel Marcos, maybe having a tough first round. But as the fight goes on, maybe the middle of that first round, I think he's going to turn that fight around and get a win here.
All right, let's talk fight number 6 of our prelims. Rinat Fakhretdinov versus Elizeu Zaleski. For Zaleski, 2-fight winning streak. He beat Abubakar Nurmagomedov via split decision. Good movement, good well-timed kicks. He's capable of things like spinning kicks, flying knees. He definitely will use them. He has a nasty calf kick as well. It's explosive. His hands are a bit wild. But he can't put combinations together. He's a pretty good counterpuncher as well from what I've seen. Likely to fight from the outside, so he's going to use that movement. Only a half takedown per fight as well, so expect him to keep it on the feet. Just 65% takedown defense, but he's a Brazilian black belt who's crafty, who's able to work his way back up if he's taken down, who's able to, use his grappling effectively. So, got to be careful, even if you do take him down. Rinat Fakhretdinov, on the other hand, beat Kevin Lee back in July. 18-fight winning streak now. Big power, hands are solid, doesn't overly expose himself or put himself in danger despite that power. High pressure and pace. On the feet, he has that true Dagestani style, in terms of the striking pressure. And with that, of course, comes the wrestling. The wrestling is there. Good entries, good takedowns, good chain wrestling. He's going to look for that top control by any means possible. 12 total takedowns landed in 3 UFC fights. His cardio is also, more than there throughout the fight. So, I'll keep this short. I like Rinat Fakhretdinov in this spot, whereas Abubakar Nurmagomedov struggled to land takedowns versus Zaleski. Still leading to one judge thinking that Nurmagomedov won that fight. I think that Fakhretdinov will be a lot more successful with his takedown attempts. Zaleski, legitimate opponent for anyone, don't get me wrong, but I think Fakhretdinov makes quick work from him. Again, I think that Dagestani style is going to be too effective here. I think Zaleski's takedown defense is just not going to be good enough to stop Fakhretdinov from doing what he wants to do. So I like Rinat Fakhretdinov in this spot. I feel pretty comfortable with it, despite how tough Zaleski can be. So I'm going Rinat Fakhretdinov to get it done.
Yeah, I'm going Rinat all day here, man. On the feet, I think Rinat can hold his own. Zaleski is the better striker, but Rinat's improving each fight, and he has power. He's a he's big for this division, and again, I think he can hold his own there, but in the wrestling, in the grappling, I think Rinat has a sizable advantage, and I think he's going to exploit that against what was that guy's name? The Ultimate Fighter guy. We all know who I'm talking about. In that fight, that Ultimate Fighter guy had decent striking, but Rinat Fakhretdinov just took it to the grappling, utilized the grappling for 3 rounds. He did not slow down. And I think he's going to do that here. I think he's going to take down Zaleski and kind of pound on him and do what he wants, right? Harris, go to Rinat's fights. What was that Ultimate Fighter guy's name? What's his name again?
You're thinking about Brian Battle.
100%. Yeah, that guy. So that's the guy where like, yes, and that was a fight where on the feet, Rinat definitely could get caught if he kind of plays their battle. We got to respect his abilities, but Rinat used his IQ, took it to the mat. And again, he did that for 3 rounds. So that's a good sign. And this is the type of fight I think is going to employ the same type of thing because Zaleski's a more dangerous fighter than Battle. And Fakhretdinov can get the takedowns, and he's going to do that same approach. So I think this is a safe play here because he's going to fight a safe fight. I really like him in this spot here. I think Rinat gets it done.
Let's talk about final fight of the prelims: Elves Brener versus Kaynan Kruschewsky. Brener beat Garam Kutateladze. That was back in July. He's a shoot to box product. He fits that style. You know, think of guys like Charles Oliveira, Alan Nascimento, that entire camp. With that camp comes pretty decent striking. He's a dynamic striker. Elvis Brener, decent jab, active calf game, kick game, I should say, nasty calf kick to go along with it. He's poised, doesn't really force his game by any means. Solid takedowns, good controlled aggression with his top game. Several wins via submission as well. Again, true to the camp and true to being a Brazilian fighter. He is active off of his back. If he's taken down, he can work his way back up. And really just one of those fighters that are going to keep going. He's tough. He fights for your money. He's dangerous late in fights. We saw him sort of out cardio Garam Kutateladze in their last fight, a fight that, you know, Garam was supposed to win, right? So that's meaningful when predicting what could happen in these types of fights. Going up against Kruschewsky, who's a UFC newcomer who fought on Dana White Contender Series back in September, and who is fighting on short notice, right? Just a few days noticed here, but you know he's going for a shot. 9 of his 15 wins are via submission. That's the first thing that I noticed with him, including his last fight. Forward pressure on the feet is something that I noticed from him. His hands are pretty decent jab, decent combinations. I don't think his striking defense is amazing, but he's tough. He's not afraid to engage with the footage I've seen with him. And I've seen him land takedowns. I've seen good grappling from him as well. And again, we know we can find those submissions. Most of his wins are via submission. I do think Kruschewsky can be live here. He looks like a capable fighter. It doesn't look like there's any obvious skill gap in this fight, but short notice. I mean, I think that's going to be too much of a factor against Kruschewsky. I think, you know, both of these guys are dynamic strikers, but Brener should be more ready for a high-paced, high-action fight. I believe that Brener, you know, has better takedowns. I believe that the grappling should be as good as each other. And at this level, you know, of course, to no fault of Kruschewsky, but I can trust Elvis Brener more at this level. The debut is an X factor. The short notice is an X factor against Kruschewsky. But, you know, I think he could be live, but you got to go Elvis Brener. I think that's just a logical pick here. So I'm going to go Elvis Brener to get it done.
Yeah, the type of fight here I think we're going to get here. I think we're going to get two guys that are going to be throwing strikes, and I think anyone can win that type of fight. But I think as the fight goes on, Brener has shown that he does have that capability in that third round. That cardio is there, and coming in short notice, that for me is a big thing. Also a debut. The UFC definitely liked what Brener did in his last fight. I got to think the UFC is trying to push that Brener train a bit here. I think they got a Brazilian that has a good style, an attractive style, and he trains with Charles Oliveira. So he does have some grappling. He does have some submissions. He does have striking. I just think he's going to be the better guy as the fight goes. And I think if he survives that, or the fight's still going after that second round, that short notice fight, I think for Kaynan is not going to help him. And I think it's going to lean the fight Brenner's way. So I'm going to go with Brener to get this one done. I think he kind of takes it as the fight goes on late here.
Let's move on to our main card. At that point, we have 6 fights overall. Of course, all Brazilians in each of these fights. Let's talk fight number 1 of the main card, Ismael Bonfim versus Vinc Pichel. Bonfim lost to Benoit Saint Denis. back in July. Good clean striking, good timing, good striking diversity, good striking IQ. The power is there. He can be explosive. The combinations are pretty good. He's precise. He's accurate. He picks his shots well, but he can also be a bit wild, right? We saw that in his last fight. Perfect example of that. He can be reckless. He can be action based instead of putting that IQ first. And his last fight was sort of the first time it cost him in a while. His ground game is there. He can land takedowns. He's shown me really good good takedown defense in general. Overall, he's just really well-rounded fighter. Good cardio as well, and still, despite losing, I would consider him to be a pretty good prospect in the UFC. Vinc Pichel lost to Marc Madsen 18 months ago. Decent overall stand-up, some feints, some switch stance, some calf kicks. He likes to engage. He likes to be that tougher guy in the ring, or in the cage, I should say. Bit unorthodox, not really the most technical on the feet, but he can be effective. Has heart. He can brawl. Has some power. Definitely a tough fighter. 3 takedowns a fight as well cannot be ignored. He does have decent ground and pound. He does have decent top control. However, what also cannot be ignored is just 26% on the takedown defense side of things. I won't spend too much time on this because we see Ismael Bonfim as a huge favorite in this one. Bonfim should be too good here. Pichel, nowhere near as dangerous as someone like a Benoit Saint Denis this far into his career. At 40 years old, you can pretty much lock in Ismael Bonfim to get it done here. I think, again, I mentioned it earlier, should be a showcase fight in Brazil. Should be, an easy opportunity for Ismael Bonfim to get back into the win column. Bonfim should just be way more dynamic, way faster, better overall on the ground. I don't see how Bonfim loses this fight, even if he gets a bit wild. So Ismael Bonfim, I think you can pretty much lock him in.
Yeah, I think this is a fight, like Harris said, I think it's a fight that Bonfim has to get done here. His striking, decent striking, good grappling, the more well-rounded guy. Vinc Pichel, though, I believe can definitely catch him. Catch him if Bonfim does not take this fight serious. I think Bonfim has to take this as a serious fight. I know Pichel is an older fighter, but just based off the age alone, the skill set on paper, this is a fight Bonfim should get done. They're in Brazil. Bonfim's in front of all of his fans. I think he's going to take this fight very, very serious. And as long as he does that, I don't see him losing this fight because I think he's going to be the minute winner in this fight, winning the most of the fight. Unless he gets caught, that's his only way to lose the fight. And again, Pichel is getting old. He's old. He's up there, right? So he's not the same guy. So I think this is a fight Bonfim can kind of do what he does, outstrike him, get some grappling going. Bonfim is the more technical striker of the Bonfim brothers, and I think he's going to show it in this fight. I think this is a fight where his speed's going to show. He's going to have the better striking in this fight, and I also believe, like Harris said in the grappling, he's definitely the superior grappler here. I wouldn't be surprised he gets a submission finish, doing what his brother does. But I'm going to go Ismael Bonfim here to get the win here against an aging fighter.
Second fight of the main card, Rodolfo Vieira versus Armen Petrosian. Vieira beat Cody Brundage back in April. True BJJ specialist. He's a black belt, 5-time BJJ world champion. Also has wrestling and combat sambo accolades, so he's very well versed on the ground. To that point, 3.7 takedowns per 15 minutes. Again, well versed on the ground, the wrestling and the grappling. The stand-up is improving. I think his movement is decent, but I think his striking overall is still an exposable weakness with Rodolfo Vieira. I think he's still a bit one-dimensional. Questionable cardio in the past as well. And, 34 years old. So this is not like a young fighter who's going to significantly improve fight over fight. These are going to be some red flags that we see throughout the rest of his time as a fighter in a lot of ways. So let's see what happens in this one. Armen Petrosian, good aspects to his game as well, but also has some red flags to his game. He's on a 2-fight winning streak. He beat Christian Leroy Duncan back in June. introduced as a kickboxer, good in and out movement, crisp striking, stays active. The kicks are good, the combinations are good, the power is good. He can also fight pretty well from the outside or be that aggressor when he needs to be. Again, some red flags with him. His takedown defense is not the best, just 36%. I think that's going to be a huge factor in this fight. But again, he's someone who's not afraid to bang. He's tough. He's effective. And thus we get a fight that is truly a clash of styles. Petrosian, of course, the far better striker. Vieira, much better on the ground. The key stat will be Petrosian's 36% takedown defense. He's been taken down multiple times in each of his UFC fights, outside of his last fight against the striker and Christian Leroy Duncan. Vieira has landed multiple takedowns in each of his UFC fights, outside of his last two. And I think he still landed one takedown in his last fight. Any Vieira takedown can lead to essentially the fight being over or the round being over. And I think Vegas, has that real possibility priced into this fight. This fight is basically a pick 'em, right? Every round starts on the feet though. So Petrosian to me has the ability to fight effectively from distance. And I think with Vieira's striking being subpar, I can see him sort of telegraphing his takedown attempts and Petrosian being able to stay out of the way, keep that distance control, not force the closure of the distance at all. But I mean, ultimately, it's flip a coin in terms of what you think can happen, because it could either be, it could be either or, either situation that I mentioned. Vieira landing takedowns at will, securing the round or securing the fight. Petrosian not allowing those takedowns, staying at a distance or staying at range to not allow those takedowns to happen and really exposing Vieira on the feet. Flip a coin for either of those. My coin will land on Armen Petrosian, though. I think the striking discrepancy is going to be too much. We saw Cody Brundage clip Rodolfo Vieira multiple times in their last fight, except Cody Brundage doesn't have the highest IQ and chose to play ground game with Rodolfo Vieira. I think that Petrosian can also clip Rodolfo Vieira, except he won't play that ground game with him. I also feel like I can trust Petrosian a little bit more from that cardio perspective as well. So I'm going with Armen Petrosian. This is a close fight in Vegas for a reason. I think you can make the case for either fighter, but I'm thinking that Armen Petrosian gets it done as the striker.
Yeah, man, unless I'm missing something. I don't think this should be a close fight. Like, for some reason, I don't think this should be a close fight at all. And I just told myself after that fight, this guy Rodolfo had versus Chris Curtis, I was like, never again. Even that Dustin Stoltzfus fight, a fight that I thought that again he got the win, but he almost lost, right? So I'm not sold on this guy. I'm not sold on this guy at all. The Curtis fight was a big fight for me because this is a fight where I know Curtis has that great takedown defense, but after the first round, this guy didn't have anything left as far as going for takedowns. He didn't really do much. He just kept it on the feet and was trying to outstrike Chris Curtis because he had no more cardio left for the takedowns. And now he's fighting a guy that is a much better striker. And Petrosian, all he has to do is train takedown defense. That's all he has to do. He has the striking. He just has to train grappling. And I'm sure that's what he's doing. He came from the kickboxing world. And as he keeps fighting these guys, his takedown defense is getting better. In that fight against Gregory Rodriguez, a really explosive takedown artist, good grappling, high-level black belt, he was able to do enough. It was a close fight, could have went either way, but regardless, that fight, he was able to get back on his feet against a guy that has good striking. The difference here in this fight is Rodolfo doesn't have any striking at all. I think Armen Petrosian has a bigger advantage in the stand-up, in the striking, than Rodolfo has in the grappling, because Rodolfo has great grappling. Based on paper, he's one of the top grapplers in the UFC with those jiu-jitsu championships, but his grappling doesn't translate well to the MMA game. He can't grapple long, and his cardio is not good. And I think this is a fight where Arman does enough, survives that first round, and as the fight goes on, it's gonna look bad. I think Arman's gonna win this fight easily. I think he gets it done. Aside from a first round submission, which is definitely something Rodolfo can do. But if he doesn't get that submission in that first round, I think this is a live bet. I think this is the type of bet that, or even just watch the fight. If he's having problems getting that takedown, get in there and make that bet, because it's going to be a long night for Rodolfo if he can't get those takedowns going. So I'm going to go Arman here. I like him in the spot. I trust him to do enough to avoid getting submitted in that first round. And as the fight goes on, I've seen enough of this Rodolfo guy that I don't think the takedowns will be there. I think Arman's going to move around. He has the cardio to bounce around for 3 rounds, and I think he's gonna beat him up. He's gonna light him up in this fight. So I'm gonna go with Arman here, underdog. I think he gets it done.
Fight number 3 of the main card, Caio Borralho versus Abus Magomedov. For Borralho, he is on a 6-fight winning streak. He beat Michal Oleksiejczuk back in April. Light on the feet, karate style of striking. He's going to throw a lot of kicks, long jab, good movement, good striking accuracy. He can be explosive. He can also be a really good counterpuncher. He's also really good on the ground with high-level grappling, with good top control. I think his greatest strength to me is his IQ. He knows how to win rounds. He knows how to win fights. He knows how to play to his strengths. He knows how to avoid his opponent's strengths as well. So look for that to play a factor in this fight. Abus Magomedov lost to Sean Strickland back in July. High finish rate, 14 KO. 14 of his 25 wins via KO, TKO, 6 of them via submission. So that's, all but 5 of his fights, all but 5 of his wins via finish, I should say. Good style of striking and movement on the feet. A lot of switch stance, diverse set of kicks, diverse striking in general. He's explosive. He likes to stalk you down. Good power. And the wrestling IQ seems to be there as well. So he's not completely one-dimensional. The chain wrestling, the top control, the ability to land the takedown. These are things that are there. Cardio might be a bit of a concern. I have seen him slow down in his fights. That was a factor in his last fight for sure. I think this fight will be competitive, but unfortunately for Magomedov, I think it may only be competitive for a round. His lack of cardio can't be ignored, especially as he faces stiffer competition, right? I mentioned we saw it versus Sean Strickland, and I think we may see it be a problem in this fight as well against the legitimate prospect in Caio Borralho as a high IQ fighter. You got to imagine that Borralho is going to be game planning here, not only to be aware of Magomedov's cardio, but also to be aware of how dangerous Magomedov can be. So I can see Borralho surviving that early storm, competing at a high level, having tit-for-tat moments with Magomedov in that first round. But then in rounds 2 and 3, I can see Borralho being, just much quicker to the punch, much more capable of implementing his game plan from there. I like Borralho in this spot, though in some ways we still don't really know how good Magomedov is, right? I mean, you look at Dustin Stoltzfus in your first fight and then the champ Sean Strickland in your second fight. This fight is going to be somewhere in between that, of course, and we're going to really find out what level Magomedov is at. But either way, I like Caio Borralho here, mainly due to being more reliable, more durable, high IQ, knows how to nullify his opponent's strengths, knows how to play to his strengths. And again, that cardio factor cannot be ignored. So Caio Borralho, I like him to get it done in this spot.
Yeah, this is a great fight. This is a fight that's gonna pretty much let us know who's the next guy. And Magomedov is a guy you got to take serious. This guy has really good striking. In the PFL, I've been following this guy. He's good. He's good. He's good everywhere. And Yeah, PFL man. This is the guy that was Bilal Muhammad's boy. What's his name? Taylor. So what's the name over there? Lewis Taylor. That's Muhammad. If you ever watch Bilal Muhammad, he has this guy with him all the time. That's his homeboy, and that guy knocked him out for the $1 million in the finals. Like Abus was like a 8-1 or whatever he was. He was a huge favorite, crushed by a super size underdog that was about to retire. But yeah, let's back to this fight. But Abus, you got to respect this guy. He has really good striking, and in this fight, if Baralo's not playing it safe, he can get knocked out. He can get his lights knocked out, and this is a dangerous fight for Baralo. He has to be careful. One thing about Baralo, though, Harris hit on this. I love that Harris hit on this point. Is his IQ? This guy is, to me, is top 7 in the whole UFC in terms of IQ. This is a smart fighter. And I think in this fight, he's going to know that the grappling advantage is there. Boost does not have the best takedown defense. He's 6'2". He's Russian, he's German, but he doesn't have the best takedown defense. And I think Baralo is going to be able to exploit that. Once he gets on top, Boost's cardio is going to be gone, and the fight's going to be so much easier for Kyle Baralo. At some point, he's going to get a finish in this fight because the grappling is going to really drain out Abus. Watch the Strickland fight again. Once they started grappling, Abus was not the same. And I think Kyle is going to do a lot of grappling in this fight. I don't think, unless Abus gets a knockout in the first 2 minutes, I don't see it going his way. So I'm going to go Kyle Baralo here. I think this is a parlay piece type of fight. But I'm still hesitant because Abus is dangerous. But I think Kyle gets it done here with his grappling.
Fight number 4 of the main card, Rodrigo Nascimento versus Don'Tale Mayes. Heavyweight fight here. Nascimento is on a 2-fight winning streak. Split decision win over Ilir Latifi back in May. He's introduced as a jiu-jitsu practitioner. He's a solid striker to go along with it. Good jab, heavy right hand, good pressure, decent overall Muay Thai. From what I've seen from him, the kicks are solid, the level changes are there, the fakes are there. He's going to try to work his way into a clinch. Speaking of that jiu-jitsu introduction, good strong clinch at that. He can land takedowns in those situations. He's landed 5 takedowns in 6 UFC fights so far, so consistent enough to know that it's there. And he's good on the ground. I like his top control. He's going to be able to look for those submissions. 6 of his 11 wins are via submission, so very capable in that regard. Don'Tale Mayes beat Andrei Arlovsky back in June. Decent movement. He's going to fight from the outside. He's going to pepper in those kicks. Good long jab, good push kick. Has that long 81-inch reach, only a 1-inch reach advantage in this fight specifically. But overall, he's just pretty dynamic as a striker with good movement. Expect him to be a bit more of sort of like a technical point fighter rather than someone who's going to go in there and really try to brawl. If you're on the betting side of Rodrigo Nascimento, although 75% takedown defense on paper, you are concerned about, Ilir Latifi landing 2 takedowns on Nascimento in their last fight. Now, Don'Tale Mayes, of course, is not Ilir Latifi when it comes to wrestling, but Mayes is the bigger fighter. Mayes has shown that he is capable of landing takedowns. That said, just not a part of his game, right? Less than a takedown per fight. I don't think we can count on Don'Tale Mayes to all of a sudden be a takedown specialist in this fight. And just overall, it's an interesting fight. Mayes looked pretty good against Andrei Arlovsky with that point fighting style. I think that Mayes can show the same striking style against Rodrigo Nascimento, and I think it can be done successfully. But I can't ignore Don'Tale Mayes having just 56% takedown defense. That tells me that if things do get sticky on the feet for Nascimento, he should be able to resort to the ground game. Like I said, looking for those clinch opportunities, looking for those takedown opportunities. He should look for that if things get sticky on the feet. Now, in general, Nascimento should be the fighter coming forward. He should be the more dangerous striker, at least in terms of the bigger striker, should have the ground advantage as well. Don'Tale Mayes should be the trickier striker, however, and could be more effective as this fight progresses. So I do think Dontel Mays is live as an underdog, but I will side with Rodrigo Nascimento to get it done here. I've mentioned it a few times, but just fighting in Brazil, I think that's too much of an X factor in favor of Nascimento here. I think if this fight was in Vegas in the Apex, as an example, I would be, a little bit leaning towards Mays as an underdog here, but that's not the case. So I'm going to go with Rodrigo Nascimento, home crowd. I think it's going to propel him to victory.
Yeah, when you look at rematches, man, you got to always be skeptical, man. You got to always do that second look, because when you lose a fight and you have a rematch against that guy, just ask yourself the same situation. Someone beat you up last week, and you're gonna fight him back again next week. You're gonna figure out what you did wrong, and you're gonna work to get that corrected for the rematch. So, in these UFC fights where they fought already, the guy that lost has been in there with this guy, and he knows the mistake. He knows more than anyone the mistake he made that cost him the fight. And if he corrects that, and in his mind, he can win the fight. So you got to be really like, these rematch fights are really hard because a lot of the times the guy that lost actually comes back and wins more than you would think, right? So it's tough, but I want to go with the underdog in this fight, but then I took in the grappling, and it's like, I think Rodrigo eventually is going to get a body clinch, get a takedown, and he's going to make easy work of Dontel Mills, but I'm not confident. I think Dontel Mills can make the improvements. He fought the guy already, so I wouldn't be surprised if the underdog wins this, but the grappling advantage, Dontel Mays' cardio, I'm not impressed with his cardio. I'm not impressed with his grappling. He let what was that guy's name? Go on Dontel Mays. He let Augusto Sakai get takedowns in that fight. And if he's able to utilize grappling, I don't see how Rodrigo is not be able to get the grappling going. They're in Brazil, so this is another fight that the UFC is definitely given a favorable matchup for the Brazilian. He already beat him. So that tells you a lot. So I'm going to go Rodrigo Nascimento to win this fight. I think it can go either way, but everything's telling me that Rodrigo gets the takedowns, tires him out, and gets like a ground and pound type of finish.
Let's move on to our co-main event. We have Gabriel Bonfim versus Nicholas Dalby, welterweight fight here. Bonfim beat Trevin Giles back in July, 100% finish rate, 3 KO, TKO, but 12 submissions, including his last two fights. Clean, controlled striking. The boxing skills are there. The good counter-punching ability is there. He's sharp. He's fast. Good pressure and pace. For as many submissions as he has, I wouldn't say that he actively tries to bring the fight to the mat, but on the ground, he's really good, right? He can land takedowns really effectively. Has good IQ. Of course, has that submission ability as well. Going up against Nicholas Dalby, who is a tough out for anyone. Unanimous decision win over Muslim Salikov back in June. That's 3 wins in a row now for Nicholas Dalby. Kickboxing style, a lot of kicks, almost a karate-like stance in a lot of ways. He's light on his feet, a lot of in and out movement, a lot of fakes and feints, some switch stance as well. He will initiate that pressure, that brawling sort of style. He will come in using those combinations, using that pressure, but he's also shown that he can fight from distance and he can fight from the outside with pretty consistent activity in an effective manner. Also just over a takedown per fight. So not really a super active part of his game, but he can shoot for and can land those takedowns. Solid active top control to go along with it when he does land it. I mentioned Nicholas Dalby is a tough out for anyone, but just like Gabriel Bonfim's brother, Ismael Bonfim, I won't spend too much time here because Gabriel Bonfim is the big favorite. I think that Dalby should be outclassed in this fight. Bonfim should be the more dynamic striker, faster, better overall ground game, especially against Dalby's 62% takedown defense. So Bonfim, big favorite for a reason, right? He should get it done. We know Dalby's tough. We know Dalby will consistently work for all 3 rounds. He can play the clinch game. He's physically strong. So locking in Bonfim, It does require a bit of a second thought, but Bonfim should get it done here. Higher level fighter, fighting at home, common theme here, showcase type of fight, big favorite. I'm pretty confident in Gabriel Bonfim to get it done.
Yeah, this is a fight on paper. Based on how the UFC is promoting these fights, this is a fight they're trying to give Bonfim to get the win. But I think Dalby's a sticky opponent. I think Dalby is a type of guy that can make it hard for Bonfim in this fight. He has a awkward style, bounces around, decent striking, decent leg kicks, decent hands, and he has grappling himself, so he should be able to do enough to kind of keep it on the feet. Like this is a tough. I would not be surprised if Dalby surprises everyone with and wins this fight. I would not be surprised. But do I have the courage to make that bet, make that pick in this fight? I don't, because Bonfim has shown nothing but great things. He goes for the finish. He can be losing the fight. He goes for that finish. He gets that finish, and the submissions is going to be there. He's in home. He's in Brazil. The UFC definitely thinks he can win this fight. They're really giving him a big test here. This is definitely a step up type of test fight here, because I believe Dalby is a hard fight, but I gotta go with the phenom, go Gabriel Bonfim. I think that the UFC is really trying to push this guy. He's shown great things. He's undefeated, and I'm not sure Dalby's going to be able to avoid getting finished in this fight. Because again, Bonfim's a killer. He goes for that knockout, goes for that submission. He's not trying to go that 3 rounds. And I know Dalby is hard to finish. I think Bonfim might be able to crack that. So I'm going to go Gabriel Bonfim here to get the win. I'm riding with the UFC on this one. And I believe in this guy. So I'm going to go Gabriel here to win the fight.
All right, let's talk main event of the evening. We have Jailton Almeida versus Derrick Lewis, heavyweight fight here. Almeida beat Jairzinho Rozenstruik back in May. He's on a 5-fight winning streak now. He's introduced as a boxer and a wrestler. Good front kick, good calf kicks, good pressure on the feet, explosive with his takedown attempts. We know he's physically strong. We know he has good wrestling, good top control, effective ground and pound to go with that. I mentioned physically strong. This is despite the 30 pounds that he's usually giving up to his opponents in this heavyweight division. He is a good grappler. 12 of his 19 wins via submission. The other 7 are via KO, TKO, so 100% finish rate. Really proving himself in the UFC, especially after his last fight versus a perennial contender in Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Derrick Lewis, on the other hand, perennial contender in his own right. He beat Marcos Rogerio de Lima back in July. Big striker, patient striker. We know he has that touch of death power. He does it especially as a counterpuncher. If you overcommit, he'll usually catch you. He controls the center of the octagon as he looks to land that big right hand. Takedown defense is not great. Ground IQ is not that good either. Doesn't really have the best chin either. Doesn't really have the best heart or will to win either. Once he's in a compromised situation, he's either going to land that Hail Mary or the fight's going to be over very soon. And we know he is on a bit of a decline, 38 years old at this point, although, kind of resurged himself in his last fight. What's important to note here, Jailton Almeida, typically forward pressure, but he fought from the outside in his last fight, knowing he was going up against a perennial contender in Jairzinho Rozenstruik, but also respecting Rozenstruik's power. I think Almeida will do the same thing here stylistically. And Almeida usually resorts to takedowns against these bigger heavyweights. Derrick Lewis has just 52% takedown defense, and I think that stat alone should cost Derrick Lewis this fight. Now, unless Derrick Lewis lands a flying knee like he did in his last fight, I mean, clearly shows he's capable of something crazy like that. I think this fight only really goes in a way where Almeida is able to fight from the outside, shoot for the takedown, land a takedown fairly easily. From there, again, Derrick Lewis doesn't really have the best ground IQ. So similarly to Almeida's last fight, where, once he landed that takedown, I can see Almeida working his way to a submission finish early in this fight. So I like Jailton Almeida. I mean, we haven't seen him take a big hit before, and Derrick Lewis is definitely capable of that. But I think Derrick Lewis's red flags are too potent to ignore in this fight against a style like Almeida, who's really going to force it on you and really go with a takedown heavy approach. So I like Jailton Almeida to get it done. I think it could be a tough fight in some ways because Lewis can be unpredictable. But if we really break it down analytically, Almeida should get it done pretty easily. So I like Jailton Almeida in this spot.
Yeah, it's gonna be easy work, man. First round submission. I think Jailton's gonna take this right to the mat, and on the mat, Derrick's not ready. We saw what Cormier was able to submit this guy. Just imagine what Jailton's going to be, this tall guy, strong guy. Yeah, this is going to be a quick work. This is going to be a 2-minute type of fight. Unless Lewis knocks him out in that first minute or two, Jailton's going to take him down and submit him. That's how this fight's gonna go. So I like Jailton Almeida here in this spot. No need to discuss much. Jailton's that good with the grappling, and Derrick has no grappling, and it's gonna look bad. So I'm gonna go Jailton Almeida here for the win.
All right, nice and quick. Let's take it to Vegas. At that point, let's consider some underdogs. Let's consider some parlay action as well. Of course, I'll start off by reading off the underdogs. Kauê Fernandes is an underdog versus Marc Diakiese. Montserrat Ruiz is an underdog. Angela Hill is the underdog. Modestas Bukauskas is an underdog. Elizeu Zaleski, Victor Hugo, Kaynan Kruschewsky, Vinc Pichel, Rodolfo Vieira, Armin Petrosian is a pick'em, so we'll count either of those as the underdog. Ebus Magomedov, Dontel Mays, Nicholas Dalby, and Derrick Lewis.
Yeah, I got to go with Armin Petrosian. I think he gets it done. I think he looks good in that fight as well.
All right, so there you go. Pick'em. Feeling good about that one in a pick'em spot is definitely a good sign. My underdog pick will be Angela Hill. I mean, again, I definitely understand being on both sides of the coin on this fight, but I think that Angela Hill is capable of pulling it off. And in terms of parlay action, who are you taking a look at?
All right, I like Eduarda Moura. I also like Rinat Fakhretdinov. I know he's not in Brazil, but again, I think he has sizable advantages in this fight. He's on the way up, right? So I think I like Rinat Fakhretdinov in that spot, and I'm also going to throw in there on this parlay, Jailton Almeida and Kyle Barallo. Actually, I'm going to leave out Kyle Barallo.
All right. So those three fights would be a 1.73. So that means that $100 will get you a return of 173 for our bigger bettors. $250 will get you a return of 432. Before I state my picks, I'm just going to, make sure that we understand winning is more important than anything. Don't chase payouts, chase the win. And that's a winning ticket right there. If I'm looking at my picks, I am looking at Rinat Fakhretdinov as well. I am going to include Kyle Barallo on there. And I got to go with the brothers, Ismael Bonfim, Gabriel Bonfim. I think the UFC is giving them winnable fights, despite both of them having to remain focused in order to get it done. But I think they do at home. So those 4 fights would be a 2.3. That means that $100 will return $230. For our bigger bettors, $250 will return a total of $576. So let's sign off on that note. This has been UFC Fight Night, Jailton Almeida versus Derrick Lewis. Full card prediction video presented by yours truly here at Boxing MMA Picks. Please hit the thumbs up, on this video. Please subscribe to the channel at Boxing MMA Picks, and most importantly, want to hear from you in the comments. How do you feel about our picks, our parlays, our underdogs? Who are your picks? Who are your underdog picks that you're looking at? What props are you potentially looking at? Let that all be known in the comments. We're more than happy to have that conversation with you and help direct you to the path of money, right? So let's officially sign off on that note. He goes by Zahn, I go by Harris. We are Boxing MMA Picks for UFC Fight Night. Jailton Almeida versus Derrick Lewis. Full card prediction in our usual fashion. Let's get this money.
Let's get it.